And in Amritsar, he was doing everything as far as personal habits, because in India, he said, everyone will watch all of your habits. Never touch your food with your left hand. So he was he taught us how to peel a banana without touching it with our left hand. He taught us how to drink water from a glass without touching it to our lips. So he was very particular about our habits, because he said everybody will be watching and making sure that I've taught you well. And Jamuna and I, in Amritsar, decided, actually Prabhupada asked us to lead kirtan once. And we were singing not just Hare Krishna, a lot of varieties of prayers. And somebody in the audience, when we were finished, criticized our Sanskrit pronunciation. And Prabhupada fired back at them, said, "You do not have 1/10 of the devotion of these women. How dare you criticize their Sanskrit?" He was very, very angry. He had such a passionate personality. And so he was very protective all the time when we were in Amritsar.
The first letter I wrote to Prabhupada was all about Sankirtan. I told him what the results of Sankirtan were. See, what happened was that Prabhupada told us, all the brahmacharis, to get jobs, because Jayananda was supporting the temple single-handedly, and Prabhupada said it wasn't fair. So he said all the brahmacharis should go out and get jobs. So, everybody did what they knew best. I remember Vishnu John, he decided that he was going to make flutes, bamboo flutes, and he used to stand on Haight Street, and he made all the flutes so that they played Hare Krishna. He would just stand out on Haight Street playing Hare Krishna all day. And he said he was a Brahmin. And he told me that I was a Sudra because I went to work for Kodak. See, Gurudas was working at Kodak. So Gurudas got me a job at Kodak, and it was a very, one of these high-tech jobs. I would get the film canister and break it in half. That was my job. Break the film canister, break the film canister. And then when they saw that I was really capable of doing that, they moved me up to a higher position where I would run the film through a heating elements, and it would be developed this way. And then I would get to bring it to Gurudas, who was in the darkroom developing. He got a bigger salary than I did. So you can imagine what this was like. But still, it was yoga, and I felt it was yoga. I'd give the whole check to the temple, and every day I just, looked forward to the lunch break. I'd immediately go out and have my little lunch, and I'd go out and with Gurudas and take lunch, and we'd have some kartals and do some kirtan. And it was the only thing that saved me was that lunch break. But after a month or two of this, it was unbearable. Gargamuni went to Montreal and talked to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said that if they don't want to do this, then let them go out on the street and chant on the streets. So we had an Istagosti, and we discussed this, and I volunteered that I would organize it, because I wanted to get out of that job. So I was very eager I was ready to do anything to get out of that job.
While we were walking back one time, I remember I asked Srila Prabhupada, as we were walking side by side, I said, "Srila Prabhupada, could I ask you this? This is not a judgmental question, because whatever you eat, I'll eat with you and feel like it's what I should be eating, and it's Mahaprasadam for me. But I don't think that the food that we're getting fed here is really being offered to Krishna. They have a Krishna deity in there, but you can't tell him from the other deities, and they don't make any discrimination. And how should we view eating like this?" And Prabhupada looked at me and he said, "Now I'm putting this out now because I feel like some of these things, at least they should be on record, even though, well, I'll tell you what happened." He said, "Actually," he said, "everything is prasadam." And so a Vaishnav, if he takes anything, he simply takes it as the mercy of the Lord. Right? But we prefer to eat what is offered to Radha and Krishna. But otherwise we understand everything to be the mercy of Krishna. He said, "But do not preach like this," he said. And I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "Because the new devotees, they will take food simply as sense enjoyment unless they offer it first. And so we do not want to confuse them." And that, as I thought about it, I was smiling on the way back, because I always thought that's the difference between how an Uttama Adhikari sees things and when he comes down to the level of a Madhyama Adhikari to preach. It was the first time I saw a clear-cut example of that, which I saw many times later on, as I saw how Prabhupada had his priorities and like that, but that was the first time.
So we did about $12 the first day, and I thought I went back to the temple. Gargamuni had a little shop, and I said, Gargamuni, we did $12. He said, wow. He said, I'm going to give up my shop. This is big. This has huge potential. He was ready to give up his shop. So the next day I decided to take Back to Godheads with us, and when the people give a donation, I give them a Back to Godhead, and the collections, by the end of 5 days, it had gone up to $40. And I wrote Prabhupada day by day how it increased. And Prabhupada wrote me this letter, and he said, don't worry so much about money. He said, if Krishna wants, he can give you the whole USA. The question is, what will you do with it? Do you know what to do with it? So it was a sobering letter.
We went to the Golden Temple, which is the most holy temple for the Sikhs. And they showed us around one of the, it's not pujaris for them, but one of the temple people there showed us around the temple. And Prabhupada was very impressed. He really liked it. They had a huge chapati maker, like an upside-down wok, that there was about 10 men around, big long spatulas, flipping chapatis, and they were feeding people, poor people, and he was very impressed by that. And we went in, and we went to the inner sanctum of the Golden Temple, and we walked all around. And at the end, when we walked out, there was a book that they asked Prabhupada to sign. And they said, would you sign our book, Swamiji? And he said yes, and he signed his book. And under the book, in the book there was a place that said, what are your impressions of the temple? And Prabhupada said, very spiritual. And he made sure that we all heard what he was saying, because he wrote it and told us at the same time. And then under religion, it was very cute because he wrote Krishnite. And it was very funny. Not Hindu, Krishnite. And so that was a wonderful experience in Amritsar.
Prabhupada was very pleased with this Harinam party. He decided when he left San Francisco to open a temple in Seattle, Gargamuni and Upendra had gone there, and Prabhupada decided that the Sankirtan party should go with him. And at that point, Jayananda went to Prabhupada and asked Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, well, again, it was Swamiji at the time, he said, Swamiji, you know, I'd like to travel with the Sankirtan party. And Prabhupada said, but you are the president. And he said, I think this is more important. And then Prabhupada said, well, what will you do? And he said, I'll be the driver. And Prabhupada thought for a second, he said, very good, you can go. And he was willing to, he thought so much about Sankirtan that he was willing to let the top devotee, the person who was maintaining the whole temple, who was the temple president, he was prepared to let him go to become the driver of the Sankirtan party. So Jayananda joined our party that way.
I remember, again, there was plenty of time. He was talking, he was letting us ask questions. And so I asked him a question at one point. I said, Prabhupada, it says that in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it says at one point that the 14 different grades of planetary systems are arranged along the stem of the lotus flower. And I said, I had always envisioned that they would be from Brahma Loka, and there's a lotus flower stem that comes down to the navel of the, which one is that? That's the Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, the second Vishnu, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. He's supposed to be in each universe, it's supposed to be filled halfway with water, and then from his navel it says that a lotus stem comes, and on top of the lotus is Brahma Loka. And that the rest of the planetary systems are arranged, it says, along the stem of the lotus flower. I said, I had always envisioned them like we put them in pictures, we put them out in space kind of around Brahma Loka, but here it says that they're along the stem of the lotus flower. I said, how can that be? Because they appear to be in all directions. And Prabhupada looked at me, and he went like this. He smiled, he went, well, it may be a very big lotus flower. Then he shook his head a little bit and he said, but we cannot understand these things with our puppy brains. And he smiled. And I just put my head down and smiled because it hit me immediately that I'm trying to conceive of all these things, but I have a very small scope, right? And then when he said that, it was a nice point of revelation.